Good evening. Welcome to our CRA meeting. It's April 29th, 2025, 6 o'clock p.m. Do we want to do the flag or do we just move right into this?
I'll pray a pledge or we'll just go to it.
We'll just get to it because I know it's going to be yes.
Okay. Speaking of the microphone.
Yes.
Yes, we have a little green light there. Make sure the little green light's on,
Yep.
and then you're being recorded. Gotcha.
Yep. So Ms. Wendy, can we get a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. You are all present and accounted for.
Okay, perfect. Any public comments? Not yet.
None.
Okay, so today we're here to talk about our CRA, kind of some historical comments. Well, first of all, an overview of what a CRA is, and I think probably best, Colonel Booth, if you give us the general, just for the new guys on the block here, kind of what the CRA is, how long we've had it, and just a basic overview of it.
Sure, absolutely, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and actually for today, members of the board. We do have that built into the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And so just a reminder to the members that are here from about a month ago, this is the workshop that we discussed, and ultimately, on a regular basis, the Community Redevelopment Agency should update the Community Redevelopment Plan, or CRP. That's really what this is about. That allows us to update our budgets and keep going on an annual basis to expend the funds that are earned through the tax increment funding for the community redevelopment area. And Ms. Janice Fleet, our city planner, through contract, is going to take us through that. The slide deck is going to take us through the history of the community redevelopment agencies. Just a general overview. We'll talk a little bit about the Keystone Heights Community Redevelopment Agency in specific. We'll talk some of the projects that have been accomplished, some of the projects that were proposed in the 2004 plan, the 2015 plan, and then we'll go on to talk about some proposed, and I really want to emphasize proposed projects in the draft 2025 plan that the board / council can discuss, add to, take away. And then we'll try to go into some prioritization of those projects and ultimately get any more guidance the board council has as moving forward to get this draft plan turned into a final plan, and we can go through all the bureaucracy response required to actually get it approved. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. Fleet.
Can I ask a question real quick first? If I remember correctly, the last time we brought this up, we wanted to delay the workshop until we knew the results of what was going to happen in Tallahassee with regard to the legislation. And maybe I'm misremembering things, but I thought that's what we'd agreed to. Does this mean the legislation is resolved?
No, sir. Not by a long shot. Sine die, the official end of the legislative session is supposed to be this Friday, May 2nd.
Right.
They have to pass a budget, let it sit for 2 days, and come back and vote on the budget. They haven't even got that far yet. So we're heading towards a special session or come back later in June, possibly to do a budget. And oh, by the way, if they have legislation like CRA bills or other bills they didn't want to get to, they could come back and do the budget plus certain pieces. So tonight, I'm looking at this, and I'm going to shut up because these are your experts right here, in getting the CRA board, which the council chooses to be its own CRA board, up to speed with everything you did in 04 and 15 and everything the staff thinks you need to do now, so that you have at least a pivot point to adjust from once the legislation that will or won't hurt us does or doesn't pass. The House left it last Friday afternoon. They did a procedure called laying it on the table. And so they're not planning to take it up again. It went over to the Senate side in messages. The Senate may or may not take it up in the next 48 hours. Hopefully they don't, and they just leave it lay. So it may just die on the vine, if that makes any sense, with no action.
We should know that by what, May 2nd?
Well, Friday we'll know if it died on the vine, or if they say no, we're going to pick it up in a special session at some future date. But they're going to have to fish or cut bait here in the next 48 hours on everything. But they got to pass the budget. That's all they have to do.
So through the Florida League of Cities, I get email updates on all this stuff. And yesterday I went into the legislative agenda and stuff like that. And the House had a bunch of amendments that either failed or passed when they sent it back to the Senate. And so I guess it's Senate Bill 110 is the bill, and that's where I saw it as of yesterday.
Yes,
that it was.
You're up to speed.
Okay.
And just to tag on to what Dan mentioned, I was in there today, so just so you knew, if you go to the Florida League of Cities website, big writing legislative bill summaries, and you can click on it, and you can go through the whole 135 pages of what they are. There's a lot of them. The particular one that we have the biggest department about is it's House Bill 991 or 1242. And so what I did today is I printed just that piece that relates to what we're doing tonight. And it just gives you a nice description of the details, just like what Charlie has summarized for us. And hopefully, let's hope that it stays as it is. We don't decide to go with it.
So let me just say that I like how you phrased that, Charlie. Whereas tonight is really kind of a review, what we did in 2004, what we did in 2015, what are our priorities, what do we still need to do research on. I do not see us finishing this tonight. It's more of it's a really good ground foundational set of work today to sometime in the future finish this.
Councilman Lewandowski, just to get to, I think the first part of your question initially was, did we decide to delay the workshop until after the legislative session? We did not, and I'll just remind you, generally what I was trying to describe almost a month ago was, we believe that going through the process that's already described and typically done will mitigate any of the risks that we saw with the legislation as it stood a few weeks ago. Where we don't think the CRA, our Keystone Heights CRA is at risk based on the language in the document, and by identifying the projects that the CRA wants to accomplish, and then getting those projects into line items in our budget, which we need to do anyway, would protect us from any potential impact that the legislation as drafted a few weeks ago would have had on our CRA or execution. Throughout the rest of the decade that the CRA will last.
Okay, so you're on the next slide. So I'm going to go, first I appreciate you letting me be here. I'm going to go through, as Jamie mentioned, the general overview of CRAs, community review.
Can y'all hear in the back?
And CRAs is confusing. I want to say a CRA is a community redevelopment agency, which you are. A CRA is also a community redevelopment area. And so people have problems, they say CRAs, and it's, and then you have a CRA plan, which that's how I like to call it, the community redevelopment area plan. So that's how I'm going to describe it in my PowerPoint. But so when I'm generally talking, I'll either, if I just say CRA, that's the community redevelopment area. Otherwise I'll say CRA board or agency, which is you. And you have to, because of statute, you're a city council, you cannot act as a board during a city council meeting. They have to recommend to yourself, kind of. But anyways, that's what it is. We'll talk a little about the history of it here, and then we'll talk about a proposed 2025 amendment. We will talk about some potential projects. I've got my whiteboard here for us to prioritize projects if we can, and then talk about a proposed timeline which could change. But as city manager said, I think everything, my last Florida Redevelopment Association emails seemed a little bit more hopeful than previously, because the Senate version of whatever happens is better. So we don't know, and so we'll see. But I'm not going into a lot of detail about what potential legislation. I know Jamie talked about it at your last meeting, because we have no idea what's going to pass. But we know what we're doing. Whatever passes or nothing passes, we need to be doing this, and we're moving this time schedule that would be fit. So, okay, next slide. So basically, the Community Redevelopment Act the whole idea of the CRA goes back to 1969, where the legislature at that time passed the Community Redevelopment Act of 1969. It's still that, it's just we've amended that act numerous times, many times since 1969. And they're established after local government adopts a resolution, which this city did back in 2004, supported by data analysis, finding that there are conditions that are slum and blight in the area. And there are, in the statute, the Florida statute, was like 7 or 8 things that you have to have: inadequate street layout, vacant property, et cetera, in order for you to designate a CRA, you have to meet these challenges in your area. That's some, and so that's what you had to do, or they did back in 2004. And then the other thing you have to do is create a CRA board, which is the commission, the council at that time determined that they wanted to be the board. One of the things in the legislation that I've seen, which is I think the Senate bill, is that they feel that the CRA board should be the council. A lot of cities appoint a board, and so I think the legislature feel they're not as mindful of the money that they should be. And the authority is to develop and adopt the CRA plan, which you have one, and then you update it, and we're looking at updating again. Issue of revenue bonds, which I don't think you've done here in Keystone. The benefit of revenue bonds is what other communities have done, and this is something that some of the naysayers don't like, is if you have a big project, and I'll give an example. In downtown Jacksonville, when they built, which originally is now the Hyatt, they knew that that piece of property that was empty was going to generate a lot of money once they got that hotel of tax revenue. So when you adopt your CRA, you basically you get this increment that today, let's say that parking lot in downtown Jacksonville was worth $100, and now we're going to build the big Hyatt, and now all of a sudden, instead of it generating $100 of tax revenue every year, it's going to generate $1,000. So therefore, that's a $900 increment. So, but you know that's going to happen from now and forever, or at least for 30 years. So then the local government could issue bonds for that increment. And so therefore, if they had to do a major project, let's say a multi-million-dollar project, they could take the increment and bond it. So smaller cities haven't been able to do it because they just don't have as much generation of tax revenue. But large cities like Orlando, Miami, Jacksonville, Fort Lauderdale, they have used it for major projects. So that's another one. You're allowed to approve acquisition, demolition, removal, and disposal of property, which you have done some. You have to implement your projects that are consistent with the CRA plan. You have to adopt a budget annually with the money that you're going to raise. And all the money that in the CRA, and if you have any questions on Lori, please interrupt me. It has to be used in the CRA area. So that area, if you generate $10 of tax revenue, it has to be used in the CRA. You can't put the $10 that is generated in your CRA anywhere else in the city. But the other benefit is you get a portion, and I think you get 95% or 85% of the county.
95.
You get, and this is why the counties don't like CRAs, you as a local government get the county portion of that revenue. So it comes back to you. So you double your money, double your benefit. So that's a plus to the CRAs, because normally you would get your city taxes on your property, but you also get the county match. So that's why you can double it. As I mentioned, it must be an important cash. So, and as we discussed, there's a lot of legislation that could totally change it, and we could spend a whole meeting on that, and it could get us nowhere. So let's just move forward. That's kind of where I felt. I was getting too frustrated trying to come up with it, but next. Okay, so this is your CRA area, as it was in the reddish salmon, whatever you want to call it. That is the area that is designated as your CRA area. If you wanted to change those boundaries because you are a charter county, you have to do what I call the Mother May I, and go to Clay County to let them agree with that change. And it's a longer process. One of the things that's in some of the legislation recent is not allowing any local government to change their boundaries. That whatever your CRA boundaries are today are, it is. So that's where you have to spend any CRA dollars. Okay? Next. Okay, so what you did back in 2004, you designated that area that's on that map as slum and blighted, and you adopted the plan in 2004 initially, and you had to have an end date, and it's 2035. Correct, yes. Which means that some of the legislation is also trying to end CRAs. Yours will end because the previous, I think, legislation about 2 or 3 years ago says you can't extend it anymore. You used to be able to, when you got to if you got to 2030, you could say, we want to do another 10 years, we want to do 10 years. Now you can't. It's 2045 or whenever your current CRA ends, which is yours 20, so. But these are types of projects that you, in the 2004 plan, felt that would help eliminate your slum and blight, was upgrade and increase parking, to do alley improvements, minimize traffic congestion, remove septic tanks and go to sewer, upgrade water pressure, water improvements, remove irregular streetscapes, your streetscape elements, eliminate unsafe sidewalks, provide facade landscaping grants, and promote some special events in the community. So that's what you've been doing. Next slide. In 2015, it was pretty much, which kind of replaced it. When you update the list, you have to keep some of the projects, but it's not like you keep adding on. But you pretty much stay the same. You had the parking improvement, the streetscape upgrades. You talked about pavilion rehab, rehabilitation. You added rails to trails improvements, commercial circle sidewalks, skateboard park events, park restrooms, and then also Season Greens banner was in the 2015 plan. Next. So what have you done? You had the restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, I think you said it was?
China Chef.
China Chef.
Well, the old residents referred to it as the KFC.
Because it was.
Yeah, okay, whatever. That's why I said restaurant. So anyways, you purchased that property, which is, as I said, you can do it through acquisition, to get rid of the slum and the blight of that restaurant, and then this is your after picture of that property. So that's something you did. Next.
And I would submit to the board, we're not finished. We gotta finish that.
Oh, yeah.
Because when DOT comes in and does the corner, they're not gonna do everything we want. We're gonna wanna put up some city stuff. So we need money and we need plans. We're not done with that yet.
Yeah. You did facade grants. That's one of your facade grants, completed projects.
I think this is the last example that we put up there of completed projects,
Right.
but I do want to highlight, because I think the city and the CRA has done amazing work. Out of all those that Janice called off, some portion of, or all of, was completed. There is plenty of new parking within the city since 2004. Facade grants were used quite a bit, as we talked about. Pavilion was completed. Alleyways have been worked on via facade grant and other infrastructure. Streetscapes has been addressed, the lighting was put in, some of the traffic calming was put in. It wasn't completed, but a significant chunk. You see some of the benches are out there. Traffic decongestion, where we've now got into FDOT's budgeting cycle for the turn lane. Septic to sewer. The downtown core was converted over to septic, and the septic converted to sewer, and the septic tanks that were sitting behind many of the businesses in the downtown core were removed. Water pressure was improved. Community events has been ongoing ever since. So quite a lot of the projects or efforts that have been identified in 2014-15, the city's done a great job. So I didn't want to, and I'm sure I missed several others.
Yeah,
One thing I wanted to add, which just was brought to my attention on Friday, is in 2010 we received the W. Thomas Mills Jr. Award, President's Award with the state for the number one for CRA monies to be completed in the downtown area. And that was beating out people in Lauderdale, Tampa, Orlando, all these other areas in the state competed for this. And actually, it's in this booklet that shows all of them compared to what we did. So it's pretty prestigious, and of course it's something I didn't know about, but anyway, I thought it was rather interesting, so you all should take a look at it.
Oh, that's great. Yes.
And I would add to what Jamie said, and you kind of said this, we have done a lot of projects. I would say we have not finished many of them. And this was something we said in our strategic plan, that we have this problem of getting things started and doing lots of good work on them and then not finishing them. And so when we get into the details, I would like to talk about finishing many of these projects that we've started.
And I think what's important is being specific, and I give Green Coast Rings credit. Back in sometimes like 1980, I don't know when, they said, we're gonna pave every street, because they had a lot of unpaved streets in Green Coast Rings. They had a laundry list, a long list. And every year, they would budget 3, and they had a criteria. They got them all paved eventually. But it took time, it takes time, because, and that was the other thing, you get around every year for your CRA about $100,000. And you have about $400,000 in the bank. So that's a good chunk of money, but it's a lot of these you could take one of these projects and eat it all up. So that's what we're going to talk about prioritization. But what's important is to come up with that, if you want to say what you say, to continue what you're saying, is come up with, we want to upgrade alleys and then list 1, 2, 3, 4, these are the alleys. And so, yes, you might not get them all this year, but you can start crossing them off the list every year. And that's really important. Okay? So what do we need to do? If we're going to have a 2025 Keystone High CRA plan amendment, we need to decide if we want to maintain, add, or delete projects from the 2015 plan. So it's really, this is the brainstorming part. And we're going to, some things, and primarily, Jamie came up with some ideas. Because of your limitation of funding, this is just staff recommendation, so you don't have to take any of it. I mean, we're nothing. You are the boss. You're the board. We're just food for thought. Okay, projects that could be deleted just to help you get some other projects done is some of the traffic decongestion projects are going to be funded through DOT. If they're in DOT's work plan, because you're mostly at State Road 21 and 100, DOT, we need to push DOT to fund this. So that, yes, there might be some other things to do, but they're really good. They have gotten so much better. DOT is working with local governments to make prettier things, to get more bang for your buck. When they come in and do a project, because they've been pushed with a lot of complete streets, they've been pushed with a lot of, because unfortunately every year Florida becomes, there's this book that comes out is Death by Design or something, I think that's what it's called, whatever. It lists all the fatalities, pedestrian and bike fatalities by location. Florida always adds number 1. There's usually, we have 5 cities that are in the top 10, so it's kind of hard not to be the #1 state when 5 of your cities, and that's Orlando, Jacksonville gets hit, I think Miami, Tampa's bad. So because of that, DOT has totally changed their thought process to make things more, what they call Vision Zero, to try things to make more pedestrian friendly. And because of that, when they come in, even with a resurfacing project, they will do more than just resurface the road like they used to do. They will do those off-site things when you push them. So that's what you do. So they, when they have those public meetings, you need to kind of tell them what you want. Also, the septic to sewer, Debbie talked about doing the downtime. Now we're at the local, what's left is city, is individual residential communities. And I think the city manager went and talked to CCUA, and you're talking about $50,000 per unit. So that's what because if you ran the sewer line or the water line, or sewer especially is more expensive, they take it to your basic property line, and then it's up to the individual property owner to connect it to their house, remove the septic tank, all that is on them. And so that can cost up to about $50,000. It's not cheap.
2011, Dusty, I know you've mentioned either $17,000 or $19,000.
It was $18,000.
It was in the ballpark.
Yeah.
When we went up and met with CCUA, they say post-COVID, $50,000 is what they're now using as their just rough order of magnitude for any hookup.
It's probably less than that here in the city, but maybe in some rural areas you might do that.
I know there's a state initiative going on to a date that they want everyone to stay converted.
Yeah.
I want to say it's 2035 or 2030.
Yeah, there's a lot of DEP grants to help out with that. So, and that, it's not to say we can't.
Like at the state level, driving it to that particular year to have it done by. for residents or whoever's not converted.
Yeah.
But in order to get that first wave done here in Keystone Heights, we had to issue bonds. We had to issue bonds.
Yeah.
It was, you know, way above our budget.
Businesses, right?
It was for the businesses downtown because, they all had septic tanks behind them. And we couldn't do parking, and there was all kinds of restrictions, and nobody wanted to come in here and be a business because of it. And so it was, the sewer thing was mainly for the businesses. Now, for example, I don't know about the rest of you in the city, but I'm hooked up to city water, but not city sewer.
Same here.
Okay, and so the question is, you know, where are we at with the water? Are all the city residents able to get water? You know, maybe that's the first thing we should look at. The most common we talk about is septic to sewer, but I don't know where we stand on water.
I believe we're there. We asked that question. Jamie and I went and met with Jeremiah Johnson there at CCUA. He had all kinds of graphics, and Matt, you would really appreciate it.
I would have
more
geeked
than I
out
did.
on that, yeah,
Yeah,
that would be
Jamie
wonderful.
Yeah,
enjoyed it, but.
we've got the GIS layers for it, and I've seen it at a very large scale view, and it looks like the potable water is throughout the city and beyond. It's the septic that's just in the downtown.
If you-
Well, and that's,
Excuse me, sewer just.
right, but that's why businesses keep going up 21, because there's septic and water up there going to the bridge. You know, that's why they're building there, that's why the Zaxby's is coming in there. And so it's not just about current, but it's also about growth.
Well, but we don't have real estate for growth. I mean, we have a very finite area of land in the city for growth.
How many,
Very, very small area of space. So if they could come in the city, they probably would try, I think. But we don't have the space for that to happen
Well, it's
inside the
not,
city limit.
plus we don't have sewer everywhere in the city. If we
Well-
had sewer, that would make a difference.
I think the real estate creates the bigger problem.
I would be interested, you know, from my standpoint, because it did stand out to me prior to the meeting, on the septic to sewer conversion. We needed a carrot to let people know that being within the city limits is a great value. I think we've got the carrot right there. You know, if somebody buys a house in town and they have their insurance company, I'm not saying I've had this experience, but they say, you know, dear homeowner, we like that you bought a house in Florida, we think you need to put a roof on your house. We already have an ordinance, if I read the city charter correctly, in the code of ordinances, that requires people within 200 feet of septic to potentially hook up, they could be asked to do that.
Yes.
There's our carrot. You know, when homeowners face having to go to, if the state goes off septic just to a newer model of system, and they face, our residents get a benefit from living in the city. We help take care of that for them. It automatically gives us something that people outside the 1.2 square mile area do not have. And so, not talking about priorities, but I just wanted to put that out there from my perspective. I think that's an incredible carrot that we ought to jump on, and we ought to find a way to finance. And with that, I just want to ask this one question before we move on to Mrs. Fleet. You said that we could potentially move boundaries if we needed to make use of CRA funds. How long on average do you anticipate the process, or have you seen that process take in Clay County when a municipality went to the county?
So Green Coast Springs had a CRA years ago, and then for some reason they decided they didn't want it, and then they tried again to get it, and the first go around they got nothing, and they got slam dunked is the best way, because it was at the county. They just recently got the county to accept their new CRA, but they have, as part of the deal, is they have a county commissioner on their board, their CRA board.
So-
And they don't, I think they're only getting like 65 or 70% of so what the problem is that if you try to expand it, you might, because the way it is with the being the charter county, they might want more. I'm not saying it, but there's that possibility. I mean, you can always back up and say no, but you know.
So what would you anticipate a time frame if we needed to go that route?
I would say at least take 6 months.
Okay.
Because they have to have a special meeting of the two groups. The statute goes into pretty detail about the amendment and to extend the boundaries, and that is something that's still in the Senate bill, so we don't know, but yes, it really depends, and I can tell you this from being involved in Green Code during the time and how they want it. It's a lot of relationships, and I know you have good relationships. I know Mr. Van Zandt does with the county and the county commission. Your relationship with the county commission, his relationship with the county manager, that has a lot to do with it, because the counties are against it. They're not as happy with CRAs because you're taking their funds. That's how they look at it. They're the ones that are pushing a lot of this legislation. Even though there are counties that have CRAs. But yes, so, but, you know.
Okay, thank you.
And so out of this workshop, I would like to ask our city manager to do research, maybe Jamie can help, I don't know. And marry the two ideas, okay? Well, how many residents do not have a sewer connection? How many residents are still on septic? And I mean strictly residents. And then, like Ms. Fleet said, get this list together and start knocking it out. 1, 2, 10, 20, whatever it is, every year. And just boom, boom, boom. And then we have the carrot. We can say, we just finished this for the whole city. Now we'll do it for non-city people if you become part of the city.
If
we gotta take care of our own residents first.
Yeah, and if you've got, if I can get the layer, their GIS layer, I can add it to the CRA map I just created, and we can see where those gaps are in the water.
We do have that layer, it's just better.
So we got like around 565 homeowners or 595 inside the city limit based on the demographics I looked at.
I thought our
Like individual
dwellings
standalone.
were 400 and something. Not all.
Around 500, just approximately
Okay.
500.
Okay.
Right? So in thinking about the 50,000, like you just mentioned, maybe that's something we could look at potentially as a grant to help us, because that's a lot of money for our
Are y'all
little.
thinking 50 grand, 100% grant, or like a half and half grant? or-
I think we have to look at what is it we can do, just like he said, the nugget that we can offer to the community, to the residents, and how much or how little we can do to offer. I mean, I have 4 septics on my property, so, you know, I think that we have to look at it like, what is the best case scenario that we can offer, and what is the minimum? Because I agree just like Ryan said, it's like a little nugget thing, and we don't have a lot of things that we can offer like that to citizens. And it's coming, and it's gonna come with required, like, it's not gonna be up for discussion from what I'm hearing in the whole mayor thing. So a lot of other cities are struggling to figure out how they wanna manage this as well. So it might be something just to take a look, and maybe we can find some grants to help, because our CRA fund will never leave it in that.
So based on that, we want to keep that on the table.
I guess we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Also that,
I would say that 50,000 is a high number.
okay,
My brother-in-law did it right here behind the gym, and it was 18,000.
So if we proceed with this, maybe we can get a jump on all the others are gonna be
Yeah,
coming
and
back
if we
with the
do
same
it
grants.
in bulk, we can maybe get a discount, but we might need to get bonds, issue bonds, because it might be a $8 million project. I don't know what, you know?
yeah.
We were talking about 2030, it would take from now till then to complete this process. It probably would help, you know, it would help our home values. I think our homes in this town would be a hot commodity. Because imagine living just outside the city and you're facing going off a traditional septic, some newer
Definitely creates some
system. I mean, it's gonna help the whole community across the.
There's an added benefit here. I don't know if you know about when we had Hurricane Irma come through, what happened in Lake Santa Fe. And Scott Cornegay was my source on this, okay? Their septic tanks backed up, okay? He had 2 foot of water in his house and human waste in his house. Okay, so septic tanks, especially as our lakes rise, could be a liability.
Okay. And the last project that we thought about, is that the trailheads and, anything with your rail and trails, because this is a big statewide initiative, is try to push, DOT to start them. I know in Hastings, they have a really nice trailhead, 100% paid for through DOT funds. It takes time, it takes a lot of staying after DOT, but it's now pretty popular for people that go on the I think it's the same trail that comes through here. Yeah. So, anyways, next. One new project we've talked about, because I think it was in your strategic plan, was some sort of a museum or visitor center. So that's something that you have talked about in previous meetings that we thought could be included if you did it in the CRA, which would be used. Okay, now we're going to go over, these are some remaining, and I said remaining because it's not like you haven't done it, you've worked out some. It's just there's still work out there. We still have a lot of broken sidewalks, you know, that need to, in the CRA area. Next, we have redevelopment needs, alley improvements. We've done some, but there's still, and I think if we come up with like a list of some even, and we don't have to do that tonight, but just we want to do alley, start thinking of which you think will have the biggest bang for the buck. So you can start prioritizing staff, which is the ones you want to, you know, get information, you know, get costs, etc. on.
James, can I jump in here?
Yeah,
real
sure,
quick
go for it.
on this one? I may use an example on the next slide, but the left picture is Beasley Lane. Looking from on the right-hand side of the picture, what I used to call Ace Hardware, when Ace Hardware was Miller's. But you know, when I was a kid, this, as I recall, was all dirt back there. There was no guttering, and so you know, the city worked and did some of the improvements. But you know, the in-state vision, I think Councilman Lewandowski mentioned it, was really trying to get, you know, the sewer was to get the septic systems out so that then you could get parking and other alleyways improvements at the back so that it was easier for folks to park off Lawrence Boulevard, walk around. Maybe there was going to be sidewalks to get you around and get you to the business core of the city. And so the city's done some of that, but then if you turn around and look immediately behind you, you can see the rest of Beasley Lane all the way to the library is still unimproved. It is, you know, an unimproved alleyway, so there's still more opportunity there. The other major alleyway in the city is Bean Lane on the west side of Lawrence Boulevard, and very similar situation where Bean Lane has been paved all the way back from Highway 100 just up to the bank. And beyond that, it's very similar to Beasley in this situation where it's unimproved as well. And so, since we're still talking about alleyways, if you go to the next slide real quick. I thought it was on here, maybe it's on another picture I'll call out. But you can see in the back of those buildings, all the waste management dumpsters are all back there. And one of the things that you can do the grants program for, we may want to consider keeping the grants program active, was screening of you know, more industrial type use activities, the dumpsters and all that sort of stuff. As I recall, asking some questions about that, the city's never necessarily changed an ordinance to require the screening of those dumpsters or the businesses that are there to grandfathered in. Whatever it is, maybe we want to go with more a carrot approach as opposed to an ordinance approach, and see if the city comes in, you know, 50% or whatever, some of those businesses would be willing to screen those dumpsters just to improve the area.
It's not uncommon for local governments to have a requirement in today's world to require dumpsters to be enclosed. And, you know, if you have a grant, like a carrot or, you know, and we did this in Green Coast Springs where we would give a 50% of it, we had a grant program. It wasn't a lot of money, but, you know, like give you up to $1,000 if you enclose your dumpster. So you still have to put out money. It might cost you more than $1,000, but maybe it might cost you $5,000 depending on how fancy you want to do your enclosure, but you could get $1,000 off. So at least you went a little bit nicer. So those are things you can do with your grant program to improve.
Okay, so a story about the locker room downtown. You know, the sports memorabilia run by Louise and her people. She applied for a grant through our Heritage Commission to repaint the building. And she told the painters what to do, and they went ahead and they painted it. Well, the painters didn't use the exact paint that was on the application. It was slightly different. And so when Elise came to ask for the city to pay the grant, she was denied it. And it was like $2,500. And, you know, if you weren't someone with a magnifying glass looking at it, you would not know the difference between what she actually did and what the painters were supposed to do. And she lit into me one day, and I think she has every right to. I do not know why our Heritage Commission did that to her. And she doesn't make but peanuts. If you've ever used her, and I did every time I coached a sports team, they do wonderful work for very little cost. She does not make a lot of money. $2,500 to her was a lot of money. A lot of money. And so if we do something like offer to pay half or offer to pay $1,000, let's please not do what the city did to the locker room. I'm ashamed to be part of the city, and that's what happened.
Well, how long ago did this happen?
Oh,
So it happened in 2023 or 2022.
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
And each store owner was offered up to $7,000 to improve their facades, whether it's awnings, front door, paint on the front. We even did some stuff. Heritage Commission was right when I just became mayor, but I knew it was going on. And so they even did some stuff on the back sides of the buildings, etc. My understanding of what happened with this business is the painter took the color that she picked out, okay? And it was not the color palette from the color palette that the Heritage Commission had identified to be used. Now, I think it looks great, it looks fine, but it is not the same. They were trying to do historic colors, okay? And they had 4 very specific colors to select from. Not to go up and down the chart, but that particular color. And what my understanding is, she chose a color that was not that color. And that is why it was denied. That's why the Heritage Commission said.
Well, that's not what she told me.
Well, I know, there's 2 sides, but you have to, and you can probably go back and see the whole thing on video in the minutes, but that's what my understanding is of what actually happened. I think it's great that, you know, we can do this, offer that to the facade improvements. I would like to see it a lot more consistent. I'd actually like to see it become an ordinance that everybody has the same colors, within a palette. And that we look more cohesive, because no matter what improvements you make, if everybody doesn't do it, you're not solving what you're trying to accomplish. And therefore, we'd have to probably create an ordinance to do that. But I think they're looking potentially expanding the color palette to be the same colors plus others. But again, to go and offer it to them, so that is our effort of creating that so-called Main Street look that would help us do that.
So it could be, I don't know your application process, but it could be in the application process easily, and you sign, so you know it's these 4 colors.
So they signed
instead
an
of-
agreement on
Right.
what they're gonna pick, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, so, it's that. Also street, as I said, we have alley, we have street state improvements, this is existing condition, but if you go to the next slide, this is something Jimmy saw in San Marco.
It's in
We
San
could-
Marco and Jacksonville.
And
as an example.
they've really revitalized that area of the city, and it takes time. It takes, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
But they now, you know, I think that's a Starbucks. You can sit outside and have coffee. You've got streets, and I know, for instance, one of the things that hopefully my friend Rich isn't one of the attorneys that argue with it, but a lot of this city attorneys don't like this because it's city property, and therefore, you know, you can get around it with waivers and stuff. Because somebody falls while they don't get the pull their chair out right, they fall into the
So you
city.
see this kind of stuff everywhere. Really.
Yeah, it's really
I don't
everywhere.
care
It's
where you go.
beautiful.
If they got that community feel and vibe, you're gonna see that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we're dining
it's really nice there, and then, you know, to see these kind of things happening. You have to extend your sidewalks, look how wide that sidewalk is. But it really, I think if there's a good thing that happened from COVID, is people like sitting outside in nice weather, which is good.
Yeah, and if you look, I mean, if you go back to the last slide, you know, in front of Guns and Gifts is an example. Sorry, Bo.
There you go. No, you went backwards. I need to.
Sorry, but you know, we do actually have some pretty wide sidewalks.
Yeah.
It's just, it's hard concrete, a lot of it's old,
And it's not pretty.
deteriorated.
It's not pretty to look at.
There's 2 trees downtown almost, and I think both of them are palms.
Yeah.
But trying to get something in there that throws a little bit of shade, that breaks it up. The meeting that was held, that I tried to identify what folks were looking for, what city residents were looking for in streetscapes. Was really looking at, hey, we want some trees, but the business owner said, hey, we need those trees to be high enough so they're not breaking the sight lines so people can actually see what businesses are there. That's one of the things why I keyed into the San Marco area. They used, I think those were crepe myrtles, I think.
Yeah.
And they get them high enough and they branch out, but people can still, they're probably not going to be as much of an issue with DOT, with people impacting our trees. If they, so there was a lot of good options, and then that brickwork was, it doesn't have to be all brick, but there's some options there for that bricking just to make it a little nicer. We've done some of the steps. Like I said, this thing is called a bulb out on the left, where the street parking's there, but then you see the grassy area goes out. It narrows that lane. It makes people feel more congested, and they slow down naturally.
That'll change when the lane changed.
It was one of those things with FDOT when they came through to do the remilling and resurfacing. They went ahead and did the bulb outs. We were able to get the lighting that's in there now, and I think probably sometime in that time frame the benches went in. Some of the benches went in. So it goes back to what Councilman Lewandowski said. We got some of it. We did part of it. We just didn't go through, and now we need some trees and some brick and maybe a few other things.
So you actually take me back about 15 years. Okay, we did not want to put in trees because they obstruct light at nighttime. We want the city lights to light up that area so people feel safe. So we didn't want trees, but you want trees or some kind of shade when pedestrians are around there trying to shop. So we offered a CRA program where we gave grants to businesses to create awnings that would come off their businesses and create some shade. And that way we could have the benefit of light at night and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, we didn't have every business, or even like half of them wouldn't do it. They just didn't want to do it. So to me, that is an unfinished project. I think we ought to push that again. I think that was a great solution that we came up with 15 years ago, and we just need to finish.
And maybe there's one thing is one of my projects years ago is you do like model blocks, and you say, okay, we want to do this block, and we have found out that a lot of times I keep up with the Joneses. If your neighbor does it, you do it. So we kind of that same thing with the list, and we prioritize which blocks we want to. So you feel like, hey, we did this block, now let's move on to the next block. So instead of smatterings all over the place where people don't notice, hey, look what they've done. So it's just maybe a different way of moving forward with your grant, so that you get things going. Okay, but yes, it's outside. Next slide, I guess next slide we talked about. This slide, parking improvements, we've done some, but obviously we have more opportunities that can be done to promote that.
And this is, I'm going to key you up here. Sylvan Way? Sylvan Way. So I think probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we did part of Sylvan Way. It's in that first picture. You can kind of see the railing where we put, I don't know, maybe 10 parking spots in. But the city actually owns very wide rights of way on both sides of Sylvan Way in this area and on past. Well, I remember it as a bank, now it's a pharmacy. As you continue to move east, the city's got a lot of property in there that, if we wanted to, could be considered or looked at for potential additional parking.
And so, and I've mentioned this to Bo, that on Magnolia, right adjacent to the old firehouse, that land that we own right there, converting that to a parking lot for public parking. Because the other idea is to get the museum and all across the street at the current public works building, converting that to that. But easily on that side, the smaller, it's 1.19 acre. I mean, you could probably hold 10 spots. It's just, no matter what kind of improvements have to be made. It could be put, it's close to a power source, things like that. And I think it's just sitting there, maybe. So, just inside the city, we just don't have a lot of options. I feel like you have to get a bit creative, and it's not even a block away from the downtown area.
Two things, Madam Mayor. Number one, I do want to give credit to, I think, it was Mr. King Hall, the Public Works, that made the recommendation that is additional Sylvan Way. Number two, a lot of people may think Sylvan Way is a long way from really the downtown core. But if you look, there's some, I was on YouTube and they were showing it. People just don't think when they're in a downtown area, how far do you walk when you park at Walmart?
Well,
and you walk to the entrance and you go back to the sporting good area. That's probably about the same distance that you're walking if you park at Sylvan Way and walk downtown. So
as we're talking about you know, we've done a lot, but we're really trying to put the bow on it, right? We're trying to finish up our vision. And signage is something that we need downtown, and they do it in a pretty way. The signs are really they're artsy looking, and they have, like, around the corner, there's parking here, or straight ahead, there's gifts and guns and the names of the businesses. So people ride by and go, oh yeah. You know, I mean, but they're done very attractive. They don't look just like some kind of a government sign, if you follow me. I have tons of examples because I have visited some cities that have had major renovations in the last several years. And some of the things that they've done to bring their cities quite attractive and have lots of people visiting.
Could I interject if you wouldn't mind backing up that slide that shows the streetscape, Jamie, you were talking about it, yeah.
This, San Marco?
Yeah, thank you. How busy is that street?
It's
Very.
super active.
It's on
There's
13.
constantly cars.
Oh, wow,
It's
okay.
extremely
So it's
busy.
kind of like
And,
21 going through town.
Probably even busier than what we have here.
and you know what's really neat, I can give as a personal example, this is something that you talk about the parking, I started writing things, excuse my handwriting, but I just didn't want to forget thoughts. I used to ride through, when I'd be coming from downtown, going to my house in Mandarin, I would, let me get something to eat, and I would literally drive all the way through San Marco, because there wasn't a parking space. The city built a parking lot behind, if you're familiar with the Firehouse or whatever. Now, you park there and you can walk, and it was just that, adding the parking lot, got people walking. Because,
I don't see anybody sitting at the
yeah,
tables.
you must have been early Sunday morning, but
This is about 4 p.m. in the afternoon on Saturday.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And it was pretty hot at that point, but when you go through there, you know, once, you know, sunset's going up, there's quite a few people.
I lived
Okay.
2 blocks from that very spot for almost 10 years.
Is that right?
And I know exactly how busy it is, and it's gotten a lot busier since then. Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, but it's great the way they've done it, though, like you said, and the idea of making more parking, because you're right, you ride around now, and you couldn't find, like before, I couldn't find anything even as much as 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
And just for historical reference, one of the things that we did do was Nightingale Street. Nightingale used to be 2-way, and so we made it 1-way, both directions going off of Lawrence, and we added a whole bunch of parking there. And that's one of the things we did to solve parking. And we're actually doing one more thing, and that is the corner project. Our tentative agreement with Guns and Gifts is that we're gonna actually add 4 more parking spaces there, because we're gonna take the parallel parking and make it pull-in parking. So we are
Like
making.
6 or 8 spaces probably.
Yeah, well, I think it's 6, but we're taking 2 away from the front of the store because we want that as part of our turn lane. So they're losing 2 in the front, they're losing 4 parallel, but we're gonna put in like 8 new pull-in spots. So it's a small plus, but we should take credit for it.
Yeah. Couple of things, like with parking, is road diets, that's where we have different words we use in the planning world, but there were, for many years, we like make the roads as wide as you can, and we gave, as planners would say, we gave out to the civil engineers. Nothing against the civil engineers, but now we're realizing what that is, because the goal is just to get people down the street as fast as they can. And now we're trying to reduce the width to make them smaller so that people slow down and also increase parking and make it prettier. So that's things to do. All right, next, we talked facade, we talked about the facade and landscaping grants program you've had. Here's some, you can see some of the benefits of it, like your awnings that you were talking about.
I really like your idea about.
So Karen,
I'm sorry. It's
I'm
okay.
thinking out loud, and I apologize.
No, it's
So
okay.
Karen Nelson takes advantage of every grant we've ever offered, evidently, because that's all we're.
And it shows. The idea of taking, walk at a time, because I see in the map, it goes all the way to the pavilion, essentially the area for CRA money, which means all of these strip shopping or businesses right along the area that's just kind of down from the city, downtown area, they are also eligible.
Yep.
So the thing is, I think we go and we take one corner and we finish it. Like we do pots, we do, benches, we decorate them, if I want to call it that. The ones that are already like Karen's whole row right there. do this so it's all finished. And then we gotta get somebody, if it's me that has to go sell these store owners on doing it, I will. Because I think they're missing the boat, you know, the opportunity, and you can understand the advantage of it. And what's gonna happen is these lakes are coming back, we're gonna see a lot more foot traffic, there's gonna be a lot of things going on here. And I think it's a way to get ready for it. I can't imagine somebody turning down money to improve the look of their business.
You would think.
If it was explained properly. I mean, why would you do that? You know, and you're not gonna have to do a match, you know?
Yeah, well, especially if you don't do a match, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is
People
the-
think they're strength.
I mean, I can certainly take that on, you know, cause you know me, I wanna see that.
Yeah.
This is the example, Mayor, Council, that I mentioned before. You can see where we've done the facade work on the back, the screenings there,
There's so
even the
much
trim on the
better.
doors, it looks terrific.
Yep.
But then the dumpsters are right there, right? And so it's like the next objective. I did want to ask Councilman Lewandowski, the awnings that are here, this is one building that did, is this the awnings we envisioned?
This is one building
That's what I thought. The last comment I'll say is on the landscaping. I don't know if the city's actually done that or not. I did try to dig in to add landscaping into the grants. If you will look at a great example of landscaping in the alleyway or the backside of a business, all you got to do is just pay attention to the physical therapy facility right here. That backs up against Beasley Lane.
Mhm.
Absolutely terrific job by the business owner. It looks amazing.
Yes.
If we could get a little more of that going on the backsides of our alleyways, it would go a long way.
Okay. Next, we talk about events. Because you have a lot of good events to maintain that. So I think it's probably a good thing that we want to do. Next, park improvements. These are some examples of things that could need some improving.
So I just went out and grabbed a couple of photos. This is for consideration. We didn't have anything in any of the previous plans on parks. If you just kind of look at the, right back here, the tennis courts, it doesn't quite come out here, but I would jokingly say we both have asphalt courts and grass courts because we got grass growing up in our cracks. It's time. It is time if we do it through the CRA or we do it through general funds, and I know both are working really hard to set conditions. But I did want to grab a couple of photos to show an example. And we didn't really talk the definition of blight or slum. A slum in general ties to health conditions, is really what that term ties back to, the definitions of the statute. Blight, simply put, there's a lot of other examples, but it just means deterioration of infrastructure. And so I think this was one of a really good example of deterioration of some of our infrastructure.
And the key is what I look is you've already designated that a long time, and now we got to figure out what we can do to improve it. Because we've already said there's slum and blight. What you don't want to use CRA funds is for maintenance. I mean, well, excuse me. You can use it for projects once we move, and I've got that point. But you can't, if it's a maintenance type, well, we got to fix the lift station. I'll give an example like that. You can put a lift station in, and you maintain it, but you can't say we're going to use CRA for the existing lift station that you didn't use for CRA funds and fix it. You don't have sewer, but that's just an example. Okay.
So a question I have, do we have already earmarked, was it ARPA money for the tennis court, basketball court, and pickleball court?
We had proposed that to you guys, and we got to the end of '24 when it all had to be earmarked. And we could have executed it in '25 and '26. And if you remember those 4 roads that we repaved, we had the deal where we had to come back around and pay more than they had bid for because of the contract language. So we executed the rest of the ARPA money and put the money we spent out of ARPA into roads and replenished the CIP with it. We took, I wish Tiffany was here. Bo, are you remembering this?
Yes.
We're done with ARPA. We submitted our final report, which was due by tomorrow, by April 30th of this year. And I can give you a full accounting of the ARPA money, but when I took the job, there was $386,000. And I want to say almost 300 of it ended up getting spent on that paving project, which saved our CIP money. That's what I was trying to say. So instead of spending CIP on the paving, we had just very general topics we were allowed to spend the ARPA on. And I was advised by some other finance directors that, hey, as soon as you can get done with it, with stuff you have to spend money on and stop reporting, then the better off you are. So that was an authorized expenditure, but we used ARPA instead of CIP funds to finish that paving project.
So CIP then would not be used for the tennis court?
It could be. If you as the CRA board want to do the tennis courts, we have to go through an RFP because ours are so far out of whack, there wasn't a legitimate piggyback opportunity. We could use CIP to do it, or we could use CRA if the CRA board, which is the 5 of you.
Because I guess I'm just remembering back when we were looking at those figures for the basketball court. I want to say it was not quite
Pickleball.
Yeah, well, it was mainly, pickleball was included along with the benches in the park, park improvements, and then the 2 courts, the basketball and the tennis court, which I knew the tennis court was gonna be a big one because everything had to come up, is what I understand. And I wanna say the quotes on that initially were around 100,000 to redo that tennis
So
court.
the initial quote we received for the tennis courts was around 160.
160.
170, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So I revisited that with them. Costs are a little bit more, not much, but essentially because we could not, because it's not just a resurfacing, it's a complete rebuild.
It's a complete rebuild.
So that will be going out for RFP probably in the next week or so.
And then the tennis court,
Tennis
the
court
basketball.
and on Rich's advice, those are gonna go out for RFP as well, all 3 of them at the same time.
Okay, and
Yeah.
so that was around what, 60, 70,000 to redo?
No, so yeah, I think each individual court, the basketball court resurfacing and the pickleball court resurfacing were less than 15 apiece.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I knew they were cheaper.
So if you're looking somewhere, and one thing that wasn't included on the tennis courts was if we wanted to redo the fence, which I'm gonna go ahead and get a quote on just in case, and the lighting as well. So that will increase that cost as well.
Okay.
So.
Plus we have to get fence now for that. Does insurance pay for the fence that got taken down for the
Yeah.
truck?
Oh, yes, man. That truck or that poor kid that flipped, their insurance is gonna pay for that.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
working on that as well.
Okay. So we would potentially then take that from CIP, those particular park projects, or, because I know our CRA is not like, what, 400,000 or something?
Well, that's what's sitting in there now. And I don't even know if you can split it, but we'll staff everything next Monday. I'll be bringing you a budget amendment just to get our budget balanced. We were balanced to the good. You had a budget surplus, but evidently that's not legal. So everything we rolled over is gonna be put somewhere. Doesn't mean we're gonna spend it all, but it has to find a place in the budget. Now I'm really taking you off topic, I thought.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do we have other areas of blight identified within the CRA, the current CRA area?
Yeah,
we do. That are along this main corridor?
You
The
can go,
main corridor of the business area?
you can go back to that
Man,
map.
to be honest with you, I kind of consider the tennis courts and parks, I consider that, to me, in my mind, that is the main corridor, because when you come down the main strip,
And you're
you
right.
can turn your head and you can see it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, I just wanted to know, so we could use CRA funds for blight if we need to, correct?
Yeah, any, like I said,
That's
any improvement.
exactly what they're there for.
Right, yes, sir.
But it's gotta be in that red area.
Yes, it's gotta be in the red area, but that's kind of what we're here today to kind of brainstorm is the best way of saying, ideas. You've got things you've done, but we have new council people, it's been a while, I don't know if y'all were involved in the last update, so therefore, new
Well,
staff.
I see your plans, but
I think I was the only one
want to,
involved in the last.
I just want to make sure that we all have good understanding, because this is the only time we can talk together.
Yeah.
So, and you do have other plans if we needed those for funds. You have other areas of blight identified if we needed to use CRA funds.
Well, the 2000, I'm sure Janice will correct me, we were able to establish the CRA in 2004, and it did identify
Yeah.
broad areas of blight that allowed us to establish the CRA. And then my understanding is, as a board, as a council, now you have the capability within the authority of an established community redevelopment area
Yeah.
to improve, you gotta work at issues that were broadly defined. So parking was broadly defined, and it is an element of a lack of parking. Adequate parking can be considered a blight, and so you're able to go after that. And so you get all the authorities of the CRA. Once you've established you've got enough blight or slum, then you just work within the authority that's given in the state statute. There are certain things that we certainly couldn't do. You can't go in and overhaul City Hall with CRA funds because there's a line in the statute that says you're not allowed to. But you can use all the authorities of the statute that you can once it's been established. Every time you do a project, you don't have to specifically establish blight for that particular project moving forward.
No,
You're just operating in a broad
I'm
category.
wondering from a finance standpoint, you know, if it comes to whether we use the other funds that have been mentioned or that, knowing that we have a reserve of 400 and we're adding about 100,000 a year into that, from my understanding, that's what I'm asking about. So all I want to know is, do we have other areas that if we needed to deal with and we have kind of some restrictions on funding, we have some, of course your budget amendment's going to tell us more. Can we use those if needed? And it sounds like we have that answer.
Yeah, we've got more projects than we've got money.
Good.
That's for
I think it's a simple way to say it.
400,000 in today's world will go pretty quick, but anything within that orange area, if it's an improvement to what the condition is now that is considered blighted, you can spend the funds. But the key is, that's why we're here today, because we have to make sure that when you have a project, it falls under what's in your plan as a general project. And that's one of the things we'll, like, we don't say, we'll say facade, and I'll just use facade improvements. We don't say, I would not recommend, say, facade improvements on X street. You can say facade improvements. Then we can have another working group where we say, this is a priority of this facade improvement, but the plan only says facade improvements anywhere in the CRA. Then you as a board can determine what is our number one priority on an annual budgeting standpoint. So as long as it's in that area and it kind of generally helps improve the area from what the conditions were, you can use your funds, CRA funds.
Tonight I'll just add on one more clarification along the same lines, because I know you weren't at our last meeting. We were talking about some of these statutes. One of the reasons why I drafted the draft plan pretty broadly with multiple categories, multiple projects that are broad in nature, was to give you, the council, you, the board, as much flexibility moving forward should the change in the statutes occur that says if you don't have identified projects in your budget in the future, because if that language stays and the bill's passed, your flexibility as a council is kind of locked down to whatever we decide in the next few months and get into the budget in the next few months.
Like,
if that bill is passed.
Like the plan would say, and I'll just use the example to tell what Jamie's saying, would say facade grants. In our budget, based on what, it was one version, which hopefully doesn't pass, that they weren't gonna let you start new projects after October 1st, then we would say facade improvements and blah, 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 blah. We list every facade that you thought you would need, so that's in the budget, because you got to 2035. So the plan is more general, with the general categories, but your budget will be more specific.
So the 2015 plan identified 141 items. Do we have at least that many as what I'm hearing this time?
No, so the 2015 plan, it had a spreadsheet in there, and it was effectively all the items that were brought up, my understanding, in workshops with businesses and citizens.
Okay.
And so just about everything that was thrown against the wall in that meeting, my understanding was listed in that spreadsheet.
Okay.
The board or council whittled that down to, I think, 11 to move forward, and then 7 specifically were already funded and moving forward when the plan was passed. So.
And we want them to be easier to implement. We want those categories, whatever we come up with for your plan, and that's what you're really adopting as a new plan list, category list, whatever you want to call it, so that it makes it easier for staff to know what we can recommend to you for CRA funding. Also, if it's ever a challenge, people would say, no, this is this and it's here. This is this and it's here. When you have that long laundry list, that is the kind of in my gut feeling, that's kind of what the legislators are going after. They don't want the long laundry list. They want you to have specific projects that are approving redevelopment, approving local governments. So,
Yeah, I would like that as well.
yeah.
Yeah, and you know, we spent 2 days creating a new strategic plan, just about a month ago. And honestly, and it is kind of looking at it 20,000 feet, but it really is kind of our marching orders with our goals. It really kind of embraces pretty much everything we're talking about tonight. And it's, you know, for the most part, in general, if you go through it. And again, it's a 3-year plan, but it does give you, it's touching on many of these things. We're just getting more to the granular level with some of this.
Keep working that. Okay, let's just go through because I don't want to keep you all, and then you probably won't be here all night. Other potential things you could do is property acquisition, which we talked about that you have done. There might be other properties you want to acquire. The reason you acquire properties is then to be able to hopefully sell them to redevelopment. Some of it is to improve it for parks or things for public use, but I will say that to me the most successful property acquisition and reuse is Jack's Beach. If you've ever been to South Beach, that was a redevelopment area. That whole area, which is now multi-million-dollar houses, was vacant with streets that nobody could develop. So what the city did was buy a bunch of properties and then sold them to developers to develop subdivisions, because no developer could deal with all that. So.
Ma'am, I've got a question for that. I'm very familiar with that specific house you've got in the picture.
That's, I want to talk to Jamie.
So,
That's it.
the CPA firm next door, which happens to be the RCPA for the city, they've tried to buy that several times and the owners haven't wanted to sell. I would say moving forward, we need to be better at land acquisition than we were on the corner property. We should have been writing them up with code violations and motivating that sell. So I've got a very, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man kind of code enforcement guy. In fact, he's great at the job, but in bringing people along. But and I hate to even sound like this, but should we start ramping up our ordinances so that we can deal better with something like this, to where they're either going to want to fix it up or get rid of it because they're going to get tired of hearing from us? So just put that in y'all's.
And this isn't in our CRA space in our red area.
It's just outside of our CRA,
Right.
just a few
And exactly
properties.
where it's at.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So I'm in favor of us preparing to acquire property. I think we need to look at financing to do that. Probably on similar lines long term as the septic to sewer, kind of same thought process. And I personally don't like the idea of a gun code enforcement. So I want to be clear to anybody that sees this video later, because the code says I can't have chickens out back, and I've been whining about that for years privately. But if we have the right economic conditions, given the great financial shape we're in town, we have, I think, not just with one house, but maybe even that downtown strip, we have some really good opportunities to take ownership of the whole area, if that kind of flows, how we go about that. So I'm in favor of that, and I want everyone else to know that I'm in favor of the right conditions. I'm not for, if we have someone that's, in an indigent situation, I'm not for taking advantage of someone. I think common sense, I don't think any of you are either. But I think we ought to look aggressively, especially on this corridor, of acquiring properties for the city's benefit and leasing them back out and doing whatever we can to generate revenue.
And the only clause in the statute that it used to, but doesn't anymore, they changed it since 1969, is you cannot acquire through eminent domain. You have to be able to have a negotiated settlement with your property owner, whoever you're purchasing it for.
The authority in the statute is actually pretty broad. It's not always, typical acquisition like you would think of going and buying a property. It can be gifted. There's multiple ways that the CRA can acquire property. It's very broad. Just one thought is, when we're looking at doing sidewalk beautification and stuff, I think portions of the sidewalk in the downtown area actually fall underneath the private property owners. And so that might be something we bump up against, is if private property owners want to see that beautification, they may want to gift that to us as a city so we can actually do that under streetscapes. That's just a general example.
And I'm okay with
Same
that
kind
too.
of things in the
That's
alleyways
part of the
too.
landscape. We'll just take care of all of it.
It doesn't always have to be save up our money and we go acquire like a regular private citizen sale. There's multiple capabilities that the statute gives us.
Yeah. Okay, so anyways, and also this was added since 1969, is housing efforts, housing incentives. That's just something, there's a big push because of lack of housing, the affordable housing across the board in various statutory requirements. So that's another thing you can do with it. So I'm gonna come back to this week, and I don't know timing, what we had, I guess, Jamie and I were very aggressive, but we thought we could get done today. And we thought that we could maybe start really coming to list and prioritizing them. But I'm gonna go to the next slide, because that's why I think what I wanna do the next slide is, before we adopt it, and we did this from our last meeting because we felt that if any of this legislation happens, we need to like really move gangbusters. I do think it's important that we don't lag forever, because you do have kind of money sitting in the bank, and I think everybody, I don't want, Clay County could say, you haven't spent the money, you need to give it back to us. So we want to make sure we're moving in that direction, and you have plenty of projects to move forward to. So, but just so you know, the process that you have to go through is once we come up with a draft plan, and you know, this isn't a very aggressive plan, and I don't think we're going to get it just based on our discussion tonight. But whatever we get from you, as this is what we want projects included, staff has to take a little time to come up with that project list. We have to, in order to move forward, we have to be advertised in the newspaper. And we also have to send letters to the taxing authorities. There's a 15-day, I call it notice period, grace period, whatever you want to call it, from the time we send certified letters to the taxing authorities and that we advertise in the newspaper before you can adopt it. You can adopt, so that adds time to it. One of the things that I think is good, and this is the actual, believe it or not, even though the board does everything, the commission makes the final adoption of the council of the plan. You as council, not as you as board. But it's good if when we get to this final list, as if the board would say, yes, this is what we think you should do, council, you would say. But it's actually the council, the governing body, that will be adopting this additional plan on the recommendation from your board, which is you, again, yourself. So we have to be advertised. It has to sit for 15 days and telling people we're going to have this. You send them, this is our list. This is when we're going to have the public hearing to the county, the water management district, fine, the inland navigation, whatever, those groups. And then you adopt, once you do that, you then, as one of your council meetings or a special council meeting, the council would adopt the actual amended CRA plan, which is basically the new projects. I mean, there's no point in going back and doing all the data analysis. That has is my recommendation. And then also from there, the staff then can create the budget and get the approval to do an amended budget for this fiscal year to get some money going, and then obviously to do it for next year, because we're already almost in the budget cycle for next year, based on, everything has to be done by September 3rd. So it's going to probably be a dual board. But so you can see there's a lot of steps, is what I'm saying, that we have to go through to get there, in order to get your plan approved. So, but what we can do, and I'll leave it up to you as the council, is how you want to move forward. You want to start prioritizing, you want to come up with additional projects, you want to think about it, you tell us.
I like the aggressiveness. I don't think we can eat this though. And luckily legislatures, it's not gonna force our hand, it looks like. So I think we have extra time, but I don't think we'll know for sure for at least a week, if not 2 or 3. So my recommendation is we plod along as best we can, and maybe try to meet this, but I think that this is aggressive. That's just my opinion. I mean, unless we're willing to meet multiple times in the evening over the next week, we can't do this. It's too much to do.
To develop the amended plan, you mean?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Like, I'm just going through the 2015 list here, and there's a bunch of stuff we've done,
Mhm.
you know? And so I think we need to do an inventory of what is done versus what is not done, and what is relevant versus not relevant. And that will help us, determine our amendment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we need a status and a plan and a schedule to finish what we've started. And that also kind of ties in with something that occurred to me earlier. I wonder if, do you have the sense that our citizenry is behind, understands, first of all, and then supports what we're talking about?
I would assume they do not.
They do not
That's my
understand.
concern.
Right.
And I think it's important to show that we started with a plan, we've made some progress, here's the plan to finish, and we're gonna do even more.
Well, you know, our biggest challenge with citizens, and we've tried to get people to come to the workshops.
Mhm.
We advertise these things. You know, it goes across the board, all kinds of things from
Sure.
community engagement, and it happens in every city. It's not just us. And, you know, folks just, I don't know, for whatever reason, you may have a handful, if you're lucky, to get engaged. We had no people who do strategic planning. It didn't happen. So I feel like we just have to know, based on our relationships that we all have in the community, we each have unique relationships with citizens, business owners, neighbors, whatever. It has to depend on us to come back, and this is the pulse that I'm getting. You know, this is what they're telling me, and that's what we have to use, because, and plus we all live here too, so we're citizens as well. So what do we wanna see, you know, that we feel is a benefit to the entire city?
Sure.
But it is a huge challenge, and I wish, just like you said, Dave, that we could get them to give us some input, but it's really pretty hard.
I think there's I'm really optimistic, but I think there's a chicken and egg type of question there too. If we can demonstrate some progress and some movement and some action and something you get excited about, I think we'd have the more interested and more people showing up.
Well, you hope that's what happens.
I hope. Yeah.
I don't want to speak out of turn. I think Councilman Cussler spoke, so maybe I should stop if you don't mind. I'll go. But, you know, if I hear that people are debating issues, you know, okay, fine, you get a disagreement. But somebody mentions money, they have my undivided attention. My personal preference to get the public's attention is to make sure that the public knows. You know, the reporters in Gainesville were told by somebody that we couldn't afford to buy a golf course. But I think it'd be good for people to know that the city not only could have afforded to buy whatever it wants within reason, but they were looking at issuing of revenue bonds to fund not only septic and sewer, but also to aggressively acquire property as needed. That can be for public discussion. Everybody here knows that's not gonna happen next week or 6 months from now. It'll take time for Mrs. Glenn and others to even get us the options to begin to even think about how to do that. Now, that's just my guess. While we're doing that, we all agree that the downtown, the best thing we can do tomorrow morning is do something downtown. We've got, I made just a quick list here. We've got awnings, we've got signage, we've got dumpster enclosures, we've got critical blight, we've got landscaping. Whatever you guys identify, because some of you have been here longer than me, that you think meets that list. I went through the 2015 and with the PDF, I was striking through stuff and highlighting, and So I kinda have my own ideas there, but, you know, any good work, I'm not opposed to voting for. I'll vote for it. But I think that's how we get people's attention. And then we can move to a final plan that aligns with not just the city's strategic vision for 3 years, but also leaves us in a better place regardless of what Tallahassee does. There's nothing more dangerous than the legislature being in session, so we can rest easy at night.
Speedy, do you have any comments?
No, you guys,
Could I add something?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
So for me, my priorities in general terms are to finish projects we've started.
Yeah.
I really think, and some we may need to restart again. Like I remember we did the whole sign thing downtown, and we had grants for that. And at the end of it, the business with the PVC pipe sign still had a PVC pipe sign. And when it was asked why they didn't get one of the brand new signs, which we practically gave them for free, the owner said, I didn't know it was going on. And so I think in some cases, we have to reopen these things and finish them. And then the second thing that I would submit is that we have focused on the downtown South Lawrence passageway. And part of the blight area is Commerce Boulevard. And we have done nothing, not a thing over there. And a real easy thing for us to do would be to put a sidewalk down there. And that would improve it. I just throw that out as an idea, but I think that after 21 years of the CRA, and we've done nothing, we ought to try to do something.
Find a way to connect it to the downtown.
Yes, do
And see,
something.
there are ones too that we could offer the whole thing with a facade change.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
That might
and
be property acquisition area, there's more
So
room.
there, yeah, and there's actually a piece of land, right behind Walgreens, right, that's
There
vacant.
you go.
They use it for Christmas tree sales. I don't know who actually owns it. I don't know whether Realtors has it currently, for sale, I
it's
think.
for sale, yeah.
Yeah, but that would be an ideal place, either for parking or whatever we decided we need to use it
Yeah.
specifically for parking if it's not for anything else. And it's right, I mean, it's so convenient.
Yeah, it's right between.
But
Liberty
that
and
helps
Second.
us connect to the commercial, like you're talking about, area. And you're right, it doesn't even feel like it's part of the city, that whole strip. And I know the business owners, like I know, Nick from Brooklyn Boys pretty well, and he's certainly a great, business owner, very supportive, wanting to see things that we can do to help them, I know we had to put no parking signs up and down the road there. He requested it because, big trucks were parking on that road, on the grassed area, blocking people when they come out of his restaurant. They couldn't see around the vehicles. So the city went in and put signs like he requested. So, I don't disagree with that at all, man.
Me either.
Yeah, it's a good area
the
to
parking,
focus some on.
the parking and sidewalks implies some pedestrian traffic.
Yeah.
Do they have that, or do they expect to have that? Are there the kinds of businesses over there that
Yes.
would?
Well, so think about it, there's the
Yeah.
post offices over there, there's a hair
Right.
salon over there, there's a
Bank.
doggy spa. Now the bakery is there and just
Bakery, right.
reopened. And then there's a nursing facility, it's assisted
Senior
living
center,
facility.
the senior
And then the
center.
county's taken over the previous answers building.
That's gonna be the tax collector.
So
And then
that's
you've got
coming, isn't it?
Stones, and
Okay.
then you have Brooklyn Boys, so, there's this huge building that
Okay.
Charlie's had his eye on, that's a huge building that's up for sale, it's very expensive.
Is that the former lumberyard?
Yes.
Yes.
So we're competing against.
Councilman Knight's gonna
properties.
tell me how to finance all this.
No, I'm not. I looked at you because you didn't tell me about the building. so-
Oh, he can talk to you about that building.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a great little grab there, but it's true, it's opportunity, is how we have to look at it. And just like you said, it's like all these shows, and I hate to use the TV shows, House and Garden, with the whole takeover, series, they go and focus on certain areas with the hope and encouragement that the other businesses are gonna say, wow, they make us look bad, we need to do this. So people do get engaged, because they want the same thing, they want to have the same image.
And the volunteer.
And it's like a domino. It starts picking up, they start seeing the activity, they're like, this is a good thing for all of us, you know?
And the volunteerism follows.
Yep. So, you know, I personally wanna put a bow on it. I wanna see the buildings to all have the proper paint colors on it. I wanna see the flowers, the benches, the signage. I wanna see increased parking. I want people, when they're coming through here, I wanna stop for a bit. I wanna spend money. I wanna look around. I think it's a cute place. I wanna go down to Whisk and have an incredible lunch. Now they're open to 9 o'clock, which is awesome.
Let's get on that.
They just did, they just changed their hours to 11 to 9 o'clock. Yeah, last week. And so, you know, how cool is that? That place there before was struggling. And now she is bringing this thing back. So, you know, I know that we're gonna see some opportunity happen. And things are gonna start happening. If this water comes back, that beach over there is gonna be packed in that parking lot.
And that's a really neat project.
And that,
That is a really
people are
neat
gonna
project.
kinda linger, they're gonna wonder what else is going on around here.
Yeah. So, I always like to end the meeting to know what, so we know as staff what we need to do next. So kindness sound, I mean,
Well, I'll just jump in. So we did draft up the draft plan. It was in the packet. I think a lot of what the council has just talked about in the summaries is in here for the draft plan. And what I'm hearing is we want to get to more specifics as the CRA moves forward. But I don't necessarily know if just a broad plan, if we wait to get to all the specifics and line items and dates, we'll never get the plan completed and then be able to kind of move towards, you know, budgeting down the line. I would recommend we could do a couple of things if the city council, if the board wanted to come back and look at, if you go to page 3, if you have the 25 draft plan, in 12 bullets, it kind of summarizes. I think most of what we talked about, we talked about dropping some of these, like potentially traffic decongestion. We may want to drop off because we think we're getting at it with the turn lane potentially. But maybe what we want to do is the council to come back and say, I'm good with these 12, and here's my, if I were to execute in priority, here's the priority I would execute these 12 in. And maybe I want to strike, I recommend we strike X, Y, or Z, and I recommend we missed, I don't know, if we missed something, I'll come back with it, we missed and we need to add it in. And maybe that's the next step is, you know, feedback from each board member. That way we can consolidate it and come up with do we think this 12 is where the plan needs to head, what we're missing as our next step. I'm just trying to speak back where I think we are after what I heard from the council.
So, yeah, so, you know, that's it, because this is kind of summarizing, we kind of talked a lot about these, but now you hopefully have a better understanding what CRAs are, and to go through what we want to do, and these are good, the descriptions are good examples. They're good, but if we need to beef them up a little bit more, and then after that, we can start with these specific projects.
Right, as an example, because what I realized is, I think when I was talking what I put in here on sidewalks was more of a, get them to ADA compliance, and I completely missed, Councilman Love, you're absolutely right, the 15 plans said, let's expand sidewalks in commercial circle. Yeah. Maybe that needs, maybe it's get them to compliance, but also expand where necessary. Because that gives us the flexibility, but I think with the intent of one of the specific projects does become, expansion of sidewalks on a commercial circle.
And any sidewalk we do today is gonna have to be ADA compliant, so we have to expand just ADA, and that's probably in 2004, that probably was a bigger thing. We want to improve the sidewalks, which will include ADA, but it will also include streetscapes and potential places for people to have eating outside, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, could I suggest something?
Yeah.
We establish a next workshop date, and at that workshop, we give ourselves homework.
Right.
And 2 homework items I would ask my colleagues on the council here to do would be first, 1 to 3 property acquisitions. What do we think would help our city the best if we were to go out and buy property? No more than 3.
And looking at the CRA map. as
Yes,
well.
well, but it could be in our, we could use CIP money
Yeah.
and do it outside.
Do it outside.
So we can move the boundary if we needed to.
Oh, we could do that too, yes, all right, so we have options.
Right.
And then the other action item, I would call it for us, would be to look through the 2025, first draft, at items and ask each council member to either add or subtract no more than 3, 4, 5 items. So that it kind of forces us to look through the whole list and say, you know what, I think item number 121 from 2015 is really important, and it didn't make the list. And so we are forced to look at pretty much every possible thing that people have thought of already. Of course, there could be things we missed, and so you might add your own. But the action item would be to add or subtract, I don't know, 3, 4 items?
I just said 3 items.
I don't know, what does that sound like?
I think that sounds reasonable.
You're talking about picking from the
So-
menu of 141 they had to work.
That's a place to start.
Yeah.
You don't have to go from there though. If you've got some other idea, that's fine. You know, but that's a good place to start because other people, we literally did have meetings with citizens and they came with ideas and we wrote down all these things. So there is a basis for every single one of those. Yes. Now some of them are a little bit non-realistic, but it's, you never know, dream big sometimes.
And the key is redevelopment. I think the mayor said earlier, we don't have a lot of empty property or place to expand. So your real emphasis is redevelopment. How can we maximize what we have to increase the value of the community, both from aesthetics, but also property values, people, et cetera, et cetera. You have real opportunity here.
So years ago, I remember hearing about a city up in Ohio, so we're gonna go way north. And I remember that they redeveloped their downtown. And one of the projects they did was not just grants, where the city would say, I'll give you a grant for X amount of dollars to say, paint the building. But they had local banks, community banks that came in there and said, okay, we know that because the people that they were buying into these properties, a lot of them came from other major metropolitan areas, and they were moving to have a better quality of life, lower cost of living. Some of them were non-traditional. I think they brought in kind of an artist culture in that community. And you know, they had some banks and others that came in and said, well, maybe we can do something on that side as far as providing lending to offset so that these businesses, homeowners, whomever, can then be able to afford to meet the grant. They can have, you know, they can match that and meet that requirement. Do we have any local banks or people, or is there a precedent or a model of that in Florida where, because I do think, you know, I don't want to put any bills in the spot, but I think that given the economic situation in the country, we can have some, shall we say, choppy waters for a little while here. And it might be reasonable to say that no matter what we do, they're going to need some financial support to smooth that out to be able to help us help them.
Private investment.
Yeah, so we're going to need some kind of private investment on there. Big time.
So we did have with Vivian Katz and Scott Konigay for a while, a local Chamber of Commerce economic development, but that has been dissolved. Does not exist anymore.
We need to bring it back.
There is a local, the Lake Region Business Association, the Lake Area Region Business Association, and I know that banks are part of it. And the bankers are involved. I don't know what your experience is, but they've always been friendly. They've always been helpful here locally. Well, obvious that works good for business for them.
So the Chamber of Commerce hosts a dinner meeting once a month, the fourth Thursday of the month, at the pavilion, and public is invited. Businesses are invited, even if they're not a member of the chamber, and I've had personal friends who have attended as well. It's nice because they have someone come speak who's from the community. Last time it was the guy from Clay Electric, a variety of speakers. But there are businesses that come, and currently the VP of the chamber works at Capital Bank right here, Tricia Evans. She's at every one of these things. But I have had people approach me about investing because they see what's coming. And he happened to be at the partner thing the other night that we were all at last month, end of March, I guess it was. And he definitely sees what's coming here and was asking about things like what type of business, lodging, restaurant, that type of question. And the biggest problem is, so I'm sure he is not the only one, I guarantee you. Because people are watching us. We have all this area around us too. Like our 32656 is a little over 14,000 residents. And, those are all part of what makes us tick. So, there are folks looking at every end of 100 and 21, and where it comes closer into the city of Keystone, potentially, I think, for a hotel, for another restaurant, just like we see these two that are going in right now down the road. So, I do think, that does happen still every month. One of the questions I had, Janice, was the whole Main Street initiatives. I went to their website today and printed up an application to apply because they provide all of this support. What is your experience in working with the Main Street? I see it was in the actual 2012 or the 20, one of our plans, it was on the list.
They are, to be designated a Main Street community is a wonderful thing, because they have, their success rate, their success stories are unbelievable. And it dovetails with CRAs. Most Main Street communities are CRAs. You've got the historic, because you're a historic community. Yes, it is well worth the effort to put the application in and become designated. I mean, there's certain commitments you have to make, but you get so much back in return.
I think it said for a population of less than 5,000, it would require a part-time person probably can manage it. But they provide, so the city would have to probably hire someone, I believe, because it is a hired role, if I'm not mistaken.
But it could be an existing, some communities use an existing employee who becomes the Main Street coordinator as part of the capital.
But
It depends which way, or you can hire a separate person. But it does, you have to designate a staff person.
Correct.
That's another.
Because they're kind of like that anchor to me. They kind of support like all the things we're talking about. Like you're a consultant given because of your expertise, but they would work with you as well. But they're working as that liaison for us. But they're the anchor that tries to tie it together, is what I understand.
Yeah.
And
that's why they want somebody on staff here that can do that. A lot of times it's a part-time
it's a
CRA.
very cool job.
Yeah, it's a Main Street, a CRA director, like half and half, whatever. It just depends how the local government does it. But yeah, you have to commit to staff, and so, but you get it back in what they provide.
I met two of them. I met the ones out of Laurel, Mississippi that helped with the whole thing with Hometown.
Yeah.
The actual their business owners also that they are running the whole Main Street officially, and also Wetumpka, Alabama, and which is what helped them do what they did.
There's a lot of them throughout the state of Florida.
And then of course Sebring now just finished, and they have the same kind of thing going on. But there's I think only about 5 cities in North Florida that are actually it. Like Fernandina is one of them.
I think Live Oak is one that just came back. I think Live Oak has one.
Crescent City,
Yeah.
they have a map and it shows where they're at. Gainesville is not, Stark is not. I think Stark was one a long time ago.
I think
It dissolved.
Micanopy used to be.
I just think it would maybe give us some insight and help, because I think they're the visionaries that kind of see it to where you're trying to go. That's what it appears to be.
Those were items 4 and 10, it looks like, on our 2015 plan. Right there.
I saw it today and I thought, okay, I'm gonna print this up because
Yeah.
I need to understand kind of a little bit more. I have been looking into them for the past year, and then I saw that today, I thought, I'm gonna bring it up.
There's a lot of, on the west coast of Florida, there's a lot of Main Street communities that tie in with their, they have their, kind of like the Lake Butler Trail you have, So obviously, like, Barclay goes through, then one, it goes down 19, I can't think of. And, I mean, it's unbelievable what all these little cities have done along the way.
So what was your third homework assignment? You had 3 things.
I was gonna ask for the city manager and staff to go through the list of 141 items and take this Excel spreadsheet, scrunch up the far right column and add a new column and give us your assessment of where we're at. It's done. It was fulfilled, like one of the things here was, item, where is it? Let me see here. Item,
That's good.
oh my goodness. Well, there it is, here it is. It's bringing a Taco Bell,
We did it.
okay? So it's done. That was item
feel good.
123. Right below it is item 124, encourage at Captain D's. And I would say Cedar River fulfills that. So,
The Cedar River's outside the city.
it is, and so you could make that comment. Does an item have to be in the city limits for us to fulfill it? Like we have down here, county fair racing event at Firm.
That's a.
Okay, that's in
That's
Bradford
a-
County.
Yeah.
And- But that's something we wanted to do. So what the homework was, or what I would like is for you to take those 141 items and do an assessment and let us know where you think we are with those.
What's been done and what hasn't.
Right.
By when?
Just,
Next
I think we
workshop.
have to look at it, so we have 2 assignments for us, to do, which I think are very reasonable. And then on the other, I don't know, when would we wanna meet again, potentially? Cause I mean, like Dan said, that's not gonna happen, it's just realistically not gonna happen. And whatever this decision that comes up could impact a lot of things, but we're just gonna move like this.
I'm gonna just hit that quickly if I may.
Sure.
Can, Mayor. So if the legislature somehow passes the parts that are, bad for us as a city with a CRA, I think you get a very aggressive timeline, either the one that's been proposed or one close to it, and you adopt this.
Yeah.
And then we can always amend it if we get any relief. But this will give you the broad strokes to do more than you're ever gonna have money to do. Best case scenario, if your CRA lasts till 2035 and you're adding a little over 100 grand a year, you're gonna have less than $2 million to spend total with what you have in the bank and what that's gonna generate. And this, if you just adopted this is $2 million worth. If we're not scrunched for time, if all this dies, which I hope it will, and I had to guess, I'd say it's about a 90% chance that it does, then we can take our time in doing exactly what you and Councilman Lewandowski and everybody else has suggested. And I just want to clarify, sir, what you're asking the city council members to do is add or subtract from this list using the 2015 list as the
Or anything
starting
else.
document, or anything else.
Or anything
County.
else, like we
Okay.
talked about tonight.
Okay. So we're adjusting fire from this.
It's forcing us to focus.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would like to say thank you for ever putting together this first draft. Okay, all right, I appreciate that. It's a great starting point.
Yes, sir.
I do not think we are near final yet, though. Okay?
No, I'm with you. I just want to make sure where we were pivoting from in this.
And I agree, if
Okay.
push comes to shove, we can decide on something that gives us enough leeway that we're still good in the long run.
Yeah.
But I'd rather do it right and more detailed the first time, so that we give you good guidance about what to do, and you don't need to come back and ask us every single time, Mother, may I do this? Mother, may I do that? You know what we want done, and you can go make it happen.
But I mean, you know, we look at the 12, and you did a great job, Jamie, grabbing all of that from those 2 different extensive documents. And
There were
I
a few pages.
really appreciate you doing that, to try to keep it as concise. But if we can take it and keep it within, say, 10 or 12 items, and we either exchange it for something we have more personal concern about, one for the other, don't add to it, and keep it manageable, you know what I mean? I think that that's a good exercise, and it makes us, we have 2 new people here,
it forces us to become engaged, 100% engaged, which I think is really important. And I think we'll have that.
Yes, ma'am, I would recommend it, I appreciate Charlie summarizing the kind of the short timeline and what might drive that as a legislature. I would say on the longer timeline, if we can target getting through this so as we go into October, we know what our goals are. One of the statutory things that we need to get right is if we are carrying tax increment funding over into the next fiscal year, we need to properly appropriate that funds forward, and it needs to be appropriated forward and it needs to be tied to projects.
Okay.
We have, my understanding is just recently just carried it forward, kind of lump sum,
Right.
and we're not in line with statute and the fiscal requirements, and we want to get that corrected.
So we can actually.
Budgetarily, by whatever we've got, we need to move it forward with a target of, this is where we think we're gonna spend those funds in the future.
Yeah.
That I think should be our backstop with our buffer of building this plan, if that makes sense.
You said it's around 400,000, Charlie?
Yes, ma'am.
So, yeah, so from that, we should be able to, I used to do a lot of forecasting with business, projecting.
Right.
Dollars coming in, what per month, this and that, with specifics.
Yeah, and we have to get better with executing those dollars. We,
Versus.
from a month or so ago forward, the time that Jamie spends on this, time that the fleet spends on me, both, that's all gonna be billed back to the CRA. I don't think that's largely been happening ever with our time. I didn't even know last year anything about this, so I spent time purchasing that, going to TPO meetings, harassing FDOT people, harassing county commissioners, all those things, but we never billed that back to CRA, even though I was doing a CRA project. So we're learning a little bit as we go, but I know a whole lot more since this gentleman to my left and this fleet have been engaged. Those were two smart hires by the current and previous council members.
Well, I like the idea of very, very specific and a plan, like a forecast, like something we are saying we are committed to. Because when you put in a forecast, you can alter it some, but you have a goal in sight and you need to hit that goal. And I think just like Dan said, it's been probably due to, there's people changes that happen here, so everybody's gotta get, I'm still learning every day in this role. But I think it takes time to get up to speed with how it works. And, I think the more we can, the more we can definitely have a focus, I think then we can honestly have true ownership in it and make it matter and be able to see it.
I would like to see the CRA funds used yearly in full, exhausted, every year. Because, well, that's great, we've got 400K roughly in the bank, whatever it is. We're losing value there. And I would like that to then tie into whatever strategic plan that we're already operating under we agreed to, so that then we can then pull from our general revenue, our other funds, to tee up the rest of that, and just to become a machine, and then that way, everybody loves us great. A couple of years, we're all here looking at one another, hopefully more beautiful than we are today, but if not, we have this kind of an autopilot where it's rolling through. Yeah, and it just keeps rolling, and then, whoever wins the elections or doesn't, we go from there. But if someone could give me some help with maybe Mrs. Fleet can do this, I would like someone to send me some information about the issuance of the bonds, so I can look through some of that, what that might look like, other cities, what they've done. So we can have a couple of scenarios if we need that down the road, not initially, but I'd like to look at that personally. And I think it would be good to, and I've spoken to Mr. Van Zandt about this. This is not directly germane to CRA, what we're talking about, but in a way it is. I think it's certainly when we do get around to budget amendments, we need to look at establishing some contingency funds in the city. Because you do have to spend funds to zero, and I understand we do have some funds out there that have large sums of money in there.
Yes, sir.
So it clouds our ability to give him guidance Because it looks on one hand like we have all this money in reserve, but we don't, maybe we really don't. Maybe if we do have a couple of bad years or the state doesn't do something that we like, we're in a different ballgame, and what we're really setting ourselves up for is deferred maintenance that's gonna come due, and we're gonna wake up with a deer, in the headlights to look at it. So, that's not directly germane to CRA, but I think that when we do get around to the budgeting, as we think about all of this together, we do need to have maybe some contingency funds for operating for the city, and then maybe even to back up and buffer whatever we do with bonds or other big ticket purchases like golf courses or whatever that might be on the horizon that we don't even know about. So that's just two things.
Charlie, do you have copies of the audit report from last year? Maybe we should share, if you have extra copies, give those to the 2 new council members.
I've got the ones through 2023. Has the state done one for?
So, no, yes, sir. So the last one was September 30th of 2023.
I've already got those.
Okay.
I've got them.
Okay.
Did you
That's-
get one
it's
that
a CRA
you asked, or
audit
did
as
you
well?
need one?
They have their own audits, I think.
Yeah, but did you
Yeah, that's
receive that?
That's all public, it's all public record. I've got it.
On an administrative note, this May 2025 is a draft.
It is, I've got a first draft on the file, it is a draft, yes.
Okay. May I suggest you put in big bold letters at the top, draft.
I think I noticed it about, after I hit send, I'm like,
Or
I have to put draft on
or
it.
something.
We adopted it on your behalf.
I thought-
No, is that totally
That was my
right?
mistake, yes, sir.
The other aspect of that is if a copy were to get out in the wild, so to speak, you don't want people to misinterpret it.
Yes.
I have a question. I did look into some other cities and how they run their CRAs, just curious. And I noticed the different things they use for funding. What is it when it's combined with an FIF? Does that sound familiar? FIF?
It's close to TIF, which is the tax
T-
increment funding, but
Yes,
I'm not sure what the
TIF.
FIF
Yeah,
is.
TIF.
It's TIF.
Yeah, TI is a tax increment. That was what I was talking earlier, where if you have a project coming in town and you know what that increment is gonna be, it's because that's what you can bond. It's the additional funding based on what a project is gonna provide you.
It's a set amount, isn't it?
Well, you guesstimate it, because let's say, for instance, they're putting in $1 million restaurant, whatever, that's how much that's gonna generate. So you figure out what that tip is gonna be, and you can bond it, or there's various things you can do
And
with
it's
that.
not a set amount, but the funding source for the CRA is tax increment funding. So on an annual basis, the value appreciation of the community redevelopment area, as it's increased since it was formed in 2004, that's the taxable increment that the county would get. 95% of that comes back to us. So that's what the tax increment funding is. It's the funding source for the CRA.
And
That's where that's where the 400,000 came from. That's where the 100,000-ish a year.
And
comes
that's not attached to anything to do with the mill rate and the.
It
It's
is.
the same rate, it's whatever your millage
Okay,
rate is,
so-
but it's the increment increase that is happening in your
But it's
CRA.
based on the county's millage rate.
No, it's your rate and theirs, you get both.
Right, but the 95% is off of the county's.
And also, yes, I think it's 95,
Or
I think
even
it's
the city
95
stuff, no matter
both,
what.
yeah.
So what we're really talking about is the county stuff, which we have no say on.
Well, and but the benefit, the difference is since your CRA is not the entire city, which most CRAs are not, you can only use those funds in the CRA.
Right,
So-
it's still county money we're getting.
Also your also your city money, you can
Well,
only
we get
use
that
in
anyway.
that. Yeah, but you have to segregate that money into projects for the CRA.
Right. I'm just saying, we're not getting any extra or less money from the city stuff, we're just restricting where it's spent,
Yes.
that's all. Where we are getting the extra money is from the county.
Yes.
Where we have no say on the millage rate.
Thank you.
If I could ask, the mayor brought up the chamber coming here once a month, that's not on our calendar.
Lake Erie, or Lake Region Prosperity Partners website calendar? Is that what
I
you-
think that's really important for this community.
Right.
Business
We've
members want it.
we've had 4 business owners recently reach out, and we linked them with all of the local, business associations and different ways they could reach out that way, and with other things too. I can put that on the site.
But I think we're talking about two different things here.
So, is Lake Region Prosperity Partners is what meets every 3rd or 4th Thursday.
Yes.
And then we have the, Lake Area Business Association, which is a separate entity that meets once a month as well.
That's the one that does the lunch and the women's.
The luncheons, and I think the next one is May 1st at the Women's Club. It's always at the Women's Club.
I don't usually see the invites on the one that the Women's Club, I spoke at it, but I don't
Right.
see an invite that comes out regular on that one.
When it comes my way, I can forward it to everyone in the council. if they want
But
to.
on the chamber one, they send us an email, should be getting an email
Right.
from them on all the events throughout the year. And they show like, I just got it for just those several weeks this month already. I think the prosperity one is not listed there yet, but we'll be kind of calling, because it's not, I mean, we're just getting into May. This would be for the May one, because I think we went to April.
We have it listed on our internal calendar for the pavilion, because it's always in the pavilion. We can take that information and push it over
Well,
to.
so when we get it from them, we have to highlight that link and go register ourselves and tell them if we're bringing a guest
Right.
for us. But we are invited. And they invite any businesses here that have them on their list get invited as well. So,
And local business owners that contact us, we link them to the person to make sure that they get on the list.
yes. Can you see that email come through from the chamber?
No, I'm disconnected from email, but they don't think I exist.
We're gonna fix that
That's a whole
tomorrow.
nother
We're supposed to fix it tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So let's fix it
We
tomorrow
gotta
morning.
get that fixed.
I was gonna ask the same thing, can you get us on distribution for those emails you're talking
I
about?
can reach out for LLRB.
I know where
Because
the
it's not on
governor's
my
at.
radar, and I don't know who to ask.
I know where the governor's at, I don't know where the meetings are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they.
Like, I didn't get an email on that.
Well, so it comes out as an email from the chamber, and it has all their events listed, that they have like, an event every day, somewhere in the county, I mean, all over Clay County. So, I go through it, I've gone to their women's empowerment luncheons that, I can pay to go to if I decide to do that. I just pick and choose which ones I may want to attend personally, but this one, they have it on there every month, and you click it, and I register either for me and Dave to go, or if I have friends that I've invited that are neighbors, and I think they ought to come in and see what this is all about, I add them to my list. You don't pay to go, they just host it. So, yeah, they'd love to have as many people come as possible. And it's at the pavilion at, 7?
I think so. I'll email
Thursday.
them to contact you guys, and then I'll copy you guys on that still.
And I think these are so important that they need to be on our calendar.
I've got it to add on
Okay.
there.
And the last thing is, when's the next workshop?
Yeah, I was gonna look at that.
If we wanted to hold it a month from now, the week prior to the June's city council meeting, that would be, I was just trying to do it on my phone because my computer died, May the 26th, I believe. If we wanted to push another month. Okay, but like I said, I don't have to.
Would you wanna do it May 19th, which is the Monday before, or May 20th, that Tuesday is Heritage in this room? Heritage Commission.
Do we need that much time?
Yeah, why not just 2 weeks from today?
That's what
Well,
I'm
I
wondering.
think it'd be will we know the decision, with the whole thing at the state level?
Well, no,
Probably by the middle of May, right? That's my understanding.
I'm not smart on what goes on in Tallahassee.
Well, I'm hopeful that Friday, the Senate hasn't taken it up, and that they just say, okay, we're gonna have a special session for the budget only, and then all the rancor of both houses of the legislature would be dead. I will watch that and give y'all an update on Friday, and tell you if anything's still alive, other than they gotta pass the budget. That's the only thing they have to do by law. That's the only thing you really have to do by law, is pass a budget and get your legislative body together. They haven't passed the budget in the last week, or really close to an agreement, that's not good.
Well, the reason I ask that is if they since we don't know, if once we know, then we can really focus on what is really what we're gonna do, right? Because if it's a no, it does change some things. It means that we may have to quickly assemble and figure out what, you know, the next few months or whatever,
Yes,
versus
ma'am.
taking a longer period of time.
If it all goes to heck in a handbasket, we'll call all of you and get some dates and go towards a more aggressive schedule. If not, we could tentatively say the 12th, which is 2 weeks from today, or the 19th. Y'all like the 12th,
I was
better, sooner
thinking
the better.
tentatively the 12th, and then if
I'm fine with any of it.
something happens, we need to postpone that by a week, that's easy.
Good? Is that good for you? The 19th or 12th?
I say maybe the 12th. Let's go for the 12th, and if we have to push back, we can.
Okay,
I like the way this council thinks.
I love it, absolutely love
I
it.
mean, we're all, I think no matter what happens with the legislature, I don't think we're gonna have any problem dealing with this.
Yeah, so we have more projects than money. Jamie said it best earlier. We heard Janice, whoever said it, we
I don't
We
see
have lots of
some disagreement.
ideas. We have lots of ideas.
Okay, to summarize the bidding, right now, we're 12th of May for workshop number 2. The homework coming out of that would be, for each of the council members, 1 to 3 property acquisitions that you might want or recommend. 3 or 4 add or subtract from the draft 2025 plan. And for the city staff is to review the 2015 spreadsheet of 140 plus proposed projects, add a column in towards the end, basically a status column of has it been achieved, partially achieved. We'll put some notes in there and come to the workshop with that. If not, I can try to get it actually out to the city council ahead of that meeting for review.
If you could do that.
Yes.
I'd say there's one more thing,
Yes, sir.
and that was to determine the number of residents on septic.
Good idea.
That's a layer that I think we have.
We've got a layer, got to get it opened up and
It's
see
part of the-
how to count it, but we'll look at it.
Yeah.
And I should say, the number of septic tanks. I don't care about numbers of people,
Can you
know.
find it?
I think we'll be able to say the number of properties that are
Number of
in
properties.
proximity
Minimal,
to
yeah,
a
minimal.
sewer.
Inside the city limits.
Yeah, we're gonna know how many are already hooked up to.
Right. Yep.
Thinking about that list of 141, I guess my approach to that would be to think of the 12 line items in our draft plan. And I'd sort those 141 items into those 12 buckets.
Or
That's kinda what-
if we think it falls into the broad categories. I think, I see what you're saying, and I'll figure out a way to identify
Just to
that.
get kind of.
That's kinda what you did in a way, right?
I did. I tried to
Status on it.
generally, I didn't go through each 140 and make sure that each one matched up against the 12, but in general.
Along that same line, you know, if we really do this right, we should bounce it off of our strategic
Yeah.
priorities.
Absolutely.
Do you
Does it
you all
fit
have
what
a
we-
copy of
I
that?
don't think so.
Do you have a copy of that?
I think I do, but I'll always take a note.
We can get you a copy of each. Would y'all like hard copies?
I won't hurt.
That's a lot of stuff to correlate, but if it all, if we do this right, then all should be
Yeah.
sending the same message.
Get it, and to Ryan's point, get it organized, and then it's just lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, I think getting really acquainted with the strategic plan, because it's so current, and we spent a lot of time, a large group of folks, almost 15 or so of us did it. And very, and remember we picked and we chose, we limited it to 4, then we picked 2, no, we just want that one, right? So we really drilled it down, I think, and it's really well done, I think, for at least the way we're looking. So it'd be nice to compare that to this list that you have.
Yes, ma'am.
You put together.
And I'll
I'll do that personally.
Well, we'll categorize it, pull it all out of the whatever the
Be a good
8
exercise
pages that are in there.
always to
What are
do,
the
I think.
what are the potential CRA projects that are in there? Yes, ma'am.
Also compare the strategic plan.
Has anybody ever been to Fairhope, Alabama?
No comment.
You know where I'm going with this?
I do not, but
In my mind.
there's Mississippi next door.
It's across the bay from Mobile. Fairhope, and I haven't been to the towns you're talking about where the people are
Oh my
doing
God.
amazing things.
Everybody ought to go see it.
In
It's
my
unbelievable.
experience, Fairhope, Alabama would be the gold standard for streetscape and, the stuff we're talking
A
about.
lot of towns are doing just
I'm
what
telling
you
you.
see, and they just did it down in Sebring. It's all over the country, but these are the ones that have been televised for you to see yourself, and that really, just seeing one of those shows is just unbelievable. And
So
I-
that's where you want me to take the city staff on weekends?
Offsite.
So y'all, if you can see this booklet here, this is blight in the city back in 2010. Before any of the CRA stuff was done. And so Deidre brought this by to me. There's the old locker room, if you can imagine. But I mean, look at that strip shopping center area.
Oh, my.
It's unbelievable. And to see the changes, I mean, you know, she's got the before and afters here. So it's pretty amazing what was done, over the years. We have a lot to be proud of, I think, for what our previous folks have done. And I think we've got some very smart people here, and I know that it's gonna go up. It's gonna really be a good thing for everybody. We good? Y'all ready?
Could I just,
Yeah.
everybody's ready to bounce, so Councilman Lewandowski's coming in the morning. Mr. Cussner and I meet almost every morning. But the other three of you, I'd like to spend at least an hour or so with, Thursday or Friday, kind of going over the agenda. I just want to emphasize how important y'all did. It's gonna sound like a school teacher, and I don't mean to sound that way. Y'all did great tonight. Your decorum matters. There was a seat on the Transportation Planning Organization Board, which TPO and FDOT are synonymous, they're locked in. That the city of Keystone could have had, that rotates between the Clay County Commission, and then they typically, the Clay County Commission gives one seat to each municipality, and that rotates around. A year or so ago, we were up for that seat. That naturally would have gone to the Keystone City Manager. But due to some perceived strife here, that was self-induced. Only you can police you. I used to preach this to the school board. I pulled county commissioners aside and reminded them, look, y'all, if I could go wrangle the Florida legislature right now and put them all in timeout, I would, or worse. But thank you, thank you, thank you. And that matters to everything that we talked about tonight, want to do. I'll leave it.